Traveling around California brings many delights. Now, imagine a vacation devoid of traffic, horns, and freeway signs. LA Times travel writer Christopher Reynolds is on the hunt for slow, quiet, car-free destinations, and he brought us his first trip. Chris, you're going to do this all summer, right?
And beyond the summer, not every week, but I'm going to be trying to find carless places, whether on islands or elsewhere, all over the world, kind of over the course of the next year.
Oh, brilliant. And you're starting right in our own backyard, or our...
Thought it made sense to start close to home.
Our own back coast. We're going to go to the Channel Islands.
I know a lot of people think of Catalina when they think of a place without cars because they have all the golf carts there and everything, but the Channel Islands farther north of Catalina is a national park, and it includes Santa Cruz Island, which turns out to be the largest island in California, which I had not known. And no cars there, really not much in the way of roads. So,
you told me how many times bigger it was than Manhattan?
yeah, it's 4 times the size of Manhattan.
4 times the size of Manhattan.
Yeah.
And there's like hardly anyone there. I think there's like one ranger, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And it's like on a busy night, they might have 100 people on the island overnight.
Okay, tell us how you get there.
It's a boat ride that takes anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes, depending on how many dolphins you see on the way. And you catch the boat in Ventura. The company that does it is Island Packers. They've had the concession for taking people to the Channel Islands for 50 years.
Wow.
So they've done it a few times. And as I say, it's anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes, usually around 75. I think it's $59 round trip. If you're camping, as I did, then you pay a little bit more because you've got a bunch of stuff with you. But yeah, it's a quick, usually pretty easy trip, although, it depends on weather, how bumpy the ride's going to be. But yeah, frequently dolphins will show up and escort the boat. And I don't mean like 2 or 3 dolphins necessarily. Sometimes there'll be 2 dozen, 3 dozen, 4 dozen dolphins. It looks like the water is boiling with fins and things. So,
gorgeous. And
yeah.
Once you get to the island, I was stunned by the different types of terrain. I mean, there were sandy beaches, there were pebble beaches that looked like Maine to me, right?
Oh, that's
there were
interesting.
sheer
Yeah.
cliffs. It's a little bit of everything. Describe it for us.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of cliffs, so there are only a handful of really easy access points to get onto the island. So you land at Scorpion Anchorage. And at that point, that's where the kayaks go in and out as well. There's a little pier there, and this is a good thing to remember, actually, because come the beginning of November, they're going to replace that pier with a larger one, and they're going to stop service to the island for probably 6 months. Ooh. They'll reopen right around Christmas for a couple of weeks, but basically, if you don't get that trip in before November, you're probably going to have to wait till, into next summer.
And how many campsites are there?
31.
31.
So not too many people going to be on the island.
But you did it.
I did it.
Took your little pup tent?
As it worked out, I did it all on my own. It's actually not the first time I've camped alone on that island, but it was a blast. There are only about half a dozen of us there. And the first time I camped on that island was in the late 90s, and the Park Service had just finished finally acquiring it from the private owners who had run a ranch there. And there were still leftover wild pigs and wild sheep and some wild horses, which came thundering through one night when we were making our dinner, which was kind of amazing.
Wow. But that was a problem for the island ecologically.
Oh yeah, it was a really ragged island. Everything had been grazed down to tiny little stubble, and all of that is different now. Regrettably, the wild horses are gone. The wild pigs.
They culled them all because it was bad for the island. They were starving.
Right, and you have to, it's this complex formula to try and get back to the native species, and they've done it all so well that the island fox, there were fewer than 100 thought to be left on the island, and now there are thousands.
Roaring that. You described in your piece that you're sleeping, and in the middle of the night you heard this rustling, and they were just having a party at the campsite.
They were, and I actually remembered the galloping horses from 20-some years before, but it was the like galloping tiny little paws, right? And it was 2 of the foxes chasing each other, and one of them making this banshee noise. It was kind of crazy.
Well, like in Yosemite, where you have bear boxes, the metal boxes where you can keep your food protected,
yeah.
They have fox boxes there,
they
right?
They do, and you better use them.
You better use them.
They are so alert. I mean, the moment I loaded my stuff onto the picnic table, there was literally a fox on top, like checking that I'd secured everything. I had to chase him 3 times around the table. I was really glad there wasn't someone photographing that.
So once you've set up your camp, you're going to go for a hike. There's lots of different trails and different places overlooked. Tell us about some of the places you saw.
Sure. Well, Potato Harbor was the destination that I hiked to, which is a 5-mile round trip. And it takes you kind of at the top of a bunch of sea cliffs, and you can look down and see the caves below, which I want to tell you about in a second. But it's great to be up on those bluffs, and you just can't help but think, California looked like this 300 years ago.
Well, the Chumash Indians lived there for 10,000 years before we came, right?
I know.
And you mentioned the sea caves, so there's a kayak company that, because after reading your piece, I immediately got on the phone and tried to book it, and they were all sold out for the weekend. I needed to go, but you use this kayak company, will take you, no matter your level, from beginner to experienced, and you'll you'll go into those sea caves.
Yeah, and it's dependent on how brave you want to be, but yeah, you have to bring a guide with you when you get the kayak, and yeah, there are a whole bunch of caves right near Scorpion, so you don't have to paddle too terribly far. And you can start out with a nice great big easy one where like half a dozen of you can be in there at the same time, and then if that agrees with you and the tide is in the right way and the swells are doing the right thing, you could end up going into one of those caves where on the way out it's like doing a limbo dance in a kayak, right? You got to do this to get underneath and hope that a rogue wave doesn't come in.
The sounds in the video that you posted were so beautiful. What does it feel in terms of like a detox? It had to be soul cleansing.
Yeah, it's true. And there's sort of wind raking across the island at the same time too. The campground is in a valley that is kind of sequestered from the wind, which is nice. But when you go elsewhere, you get more of the wind. But yeah, you hear all sorts of birds.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Chris's travel journal to Santa Cruz Island can be found at latimes.com. And we'll continue to follow his journeys here on LA Times Today as well.